For more than 3,000 years, the Galactic Empire had ruled the stars like an unshakable mountain standing in the heart of the galaxy. Its banners flew over 10,000 worlds, its fleets moved like dark waves across the void, and its voice echoed louder than the suns themselves. Species rose and fell under its gaze, and those who dared to resist were quickly erased from history. The Emperor, a figure of unmatched pride and power, sat on a throne built from the bones of defeated civilizations. His advisors feared no enemy, for in all the known sectors of space, no species had ever managed to truly challenge the might of the Empire. Every enemy so far had screamed and begged before they were crushed. Every rebellion had burned in the fire of imperial judgment, and every alliance against them had fallen apart like paper in a storm. That is why, when a name began to quietly appear in distant reports, no one took it seriously. The first message came from a small outpost near the Andromeda Expanse, a region considered unimportant and mostly uninhabited. A scout ship had encountered strange signals, an unknown language, and odd structures orbiting a blue planet. The report was sent, filed, and ignored. As more scouts returned with similar findings, curiosity grew, but not concern. The Emperor's advisors chuckled when they discussed the matter during one of their routine strategy meetings. A tall general, with silver armor that reflected the golden lights of the throne room, shook his head. "Let them build," he said. "When they grow too bold, we will simply erase them like all the others." The Emperor leaned back in his chair, amused. "Do we even know what they call themselves?" he asked. One advisor replied, "They are called humans, from a planet named Earth. They are still primitive. Their ships are small, their colonies few, and their weapons outdated." That answer was enough. The room returned to other matters: border taxes, trade routes, and the rebellion on the outer moons of Pharaoh's 9. Earth was forgotten within minutes. But far from the shining halls of the imperial palace, on the edges of known space, something very different was happening. The humans were not what they seemed. While the Empire mocked their growth, humans had been watching. They listened to every imperial broadcast they could catch. They mapped every star route, studied every captured frequency, and observed every pattern of attack used by the Empire in its past wars. They hid their real strength behind silence and smiles, never showing more than what they wanted others to see. Unlike the proud empires of the galaxy who broadcast their victories and sang their own praises, the humans remained quiet, hidden in the background, learning faster than anyone expected. Their scientists worked day and night, not just creating better weapons, but understanding the very fabric of space in ways the Empire had never considered. They did not fight for glory, nor to expand for power. They prepared because they knew, one day, the Empire would come knocking. And when that day arrived, they would be ready. Back in the imperial capital, time passed as usual. The Empire continued its work enslaving weak species, taxing powerful ones, and maintaining a delicate balance of fear and control across all systems. The humans were mentioned again, but this time in the form of a request. A minor commander asked for permission to survey human-controlled space more closely. The request was approved with no ceremony. A single patrol ship, modest in size but powerful in design, was sent to investigate. Its captain was confident, as he should be. He had led over 100 missions and returned victorious each time. As his ship approached Earth's territory, he expected a short mission and inspection, maybe a demand for surrender, followed by a return with trophies. Instead, his ship never came back. What returned was a broken signal, a distorted cry for help that faded into static. The Imperial Command received the emergency code only once. It was short and filled with confusion. They came out of nowhere. Weapons unknown. "We can't escape. Everything's falling apart." Then silence. Complete silence. The Empire tried to reach the ship. No response. They scanned the area. No ship. No wreckage. No trace of battle. Just a silent part of space, where one of their strongest patrols had vanished like dust in the wind. The Emperor was informed, and this time he frowned. It was not fear he never feared, but irritation. A single patrol ship was a small thing, but the mystery around it was not. The Empire had faced surprises before, but even surprises left shadows behind. This felt different. The commander who gave the survey order was punished for acting without proper backup, and a larger investigation fleet was ordered to travel to the same area. But already, the Empire's overconfidence had cracked, even if they didn't fully realize it yet. Something in their perfect system had gone wrong. They had sent a message of dominance to the humans, and the humans had answered not with words, but with action. The Empire had faced enemies with power before, but never one with such control over silence. The humans didn't brag. They didn't threaten. They didn't scream. They just acted. And in that quiet destruction, there was a warning far louder than any declaration of war. The message was clear, though only a few in the Empire could hear it. You are not ready. But the Empire, blind in its pride, refused to listen. And so, they continued forward, unaware that they had already taken the first step into a war they couldn't understand. The investigation fleet sent by the Galactic Empire entered human space with confidence still carved deep into their systems, their captains trained to expect respect, fear, and immediate surrender from any species they encountered. With 10 heavy cruisers, 30 fighter escorts, and 2 command ships equipped with long-range scanners, the fleet moved like a blade slicing through the unknown, believing the silence around Earth to be a sign of weakness, not strategy. The commanding officer, High Captain Relvas, stood on the bridge with his arms folded behind his back, staring at the blue and white planet displayed on the large viewing screen. Earth looked calm, almost peaceful, with its oceans glittering under its star and its artificial satellites barely visible through the haze of atmosphere. But Relvas didn't trust calm, he mistook it for carelessness. As his fleet approached orbit, standard Imperial protocol kicked in. A loud, wide-range broadcast was sent from the lead ship in multiple languages, demanding immediate surrender and complete submission to Imperial authority. Normally, this was the moment when all resistance ended. Civilizations that tried to hide behind kindness or peace usually fell apart after hearing that message, either sending diplomats or begging for mercy before a single weapon was fired. But this time, there was no reply. Not one word. Not even static. The human systems absorbed the signal, processed it, and responded only with silence. Relvas grew irritated and ordered a scan of all communication channels, but the results returned as if nothing had ever been transmitted. It was then that his science officer noticed something strange. One of the scout ships had vanished from their formation. At first, it was thought to be a sensor glitch, but then another disappeared, and another. There were no explosions, no alarms, no energy spikes, just ships going dark, one by one, with their last locations spread across vast space, making no pattern. Panic began to crawl beneath the skin of officers who had never known defeat. Suddenly, a nearby ship flared red across all screens. One of the command ships was spinning out of control, its engines burning like dying stars before blinking out completely. It took only seconds for the fleet to realize that they were under attack, but they had no idea from where or how. Relva shouted orders for battle positions, defensive shields, and target acquisition, but there was nothing to target. The human ships had not appeared, had not announced themselves, and yet they were clearly here, moving like shadows between the stars. One of the cruiser captains screamed through the comms that a boarding had occurred. Human soldiers had appeared inside the ship without any docking, cutting through steel like it was paper. The crew tried to fight back, but the humans moved too fast, using weapons that distorted the air, bending light and sound. Every scream that came through was cut short, as if a hand had silenced them mid-sentence. Then the channel died. Relvas tried to retreat, realizing too late that this was not a skirmish or a misunderstanding. This was a trap carefully built by a species that had been studying them in silence. As his remaining ships tried to pull back, strange interference shut down their jump drives. Navigation became impossible. Their targeting systems stopped responding, showing them false positions or looping images that confused their gunners. A new signal cut through the chaos. It was not an attack. It was a voice. Calm, steady, and completely human. It echoed through every Imperial ship like a cold whisper. Do not test Earth's patience. That was all. No threats, No war declaration, no dramatic speech, just a warning delivered with confidence that felt more dangerous than any weapon. And then, just as quickly as it began, the human forces vanished again. They did not destroy the entire fleet. They left some of it intact. It was not mercy, it was a message. The few ships that managed to limp back to the Empire were silent at first, their crews too shaken to speak. But when they finally reported what happened, their voices trembled with something no Imperial officer had ever shown before: fear. The Emperor listened carefully, his expression unreadable, while his advisors argued and tried to make sense of what had occurred. Some claimed it was an illusion, others blamed internal failure or sabotage, but the truth was sitting heavily in the room, undeniable and unsettling. The humans had not just defended their territory, they had predicted the Empire's actions, prepared for their tactics, and responded with surgical precision. For the first time in recorded history, the Galactic Empire had lost a battle they didn't even understand. The more the Emperor listened, the more he began to realize that this was no ordinary enemy. This was not some primitive race hoping for survival. This was a force that had quietly watched the galaxy fall into arrogance, had learned without asking, and had prepared without boasting. And now, when the time came, they struck like a ghost rising from the shadows. The first contact had been made, and the first mistake had already happened. The Empire had believed the humans were just another species to conquer. They now knew better. And as whispers of the event spread throughout Imperial space, people began to speak the name human with something strange in their voices, not curiosity, not hatred, but a warning shared in low voices, like a storm was coming that no one could stop. After the failed first contact and the silent destruction of the Imperial fleet, whispers of Earth began spreading like a virus through the halls of the Galactic Empire, but many still refused to believe what had happened. The Empire had conquered thousands of species, broken empires older than time, and ruled systems stretching across galaxies. The idea that one planet, one species from a single star system, could resist them, let alone fight back, sounded like madness to those who had never faced failure. High Command dismissed the defeat as a fluke, an error in command, or perhaps some hidden technology that would eventually be reverse-engineered or destroyed. They called for a second attempt, not a fleet of scouts this time, but a force meant to crush and erase Earth entirely, one so large and terrifying that resistance would be impossible. As preparation began, Imperial scientists studied every signal, broadcast, and captured data fragment from human systems. What they found made no sense. Earth's population lived freely, argued in public, mocked their leaders, and even laughed in the face of danger. Their media was filled with stories of rebellion, war, and survival, but it was fiction, yet also a warning. Hidden in their culture were patterns, hints of a species that had known suffering, had learned from chaos, and had made strength from pain. But the generals ignored the warnings. They only saw a planet that had not even colonized its own solar system, whose military looked like a joke compared to the Empire's armadas. So, they sent a war fleet, a full Imperial response group, armed with planetary breakers, orbital siege stations, and armies bred for war. This was not a mission of diplomacy. It was meant to erase the insult. The fleet arrived in Earth's orbit in perfect formation, blocking out stars and casting shadows across the moon, but Earth did not send diplomats or surrender codes. Instead, all systems on the fleet began to experience strange disruptions, shields fluctuated, weapons went offline, and communications turned into loud static. One by one, Imperial ships lost control of their internal systems. It was as if something was inside their networks, crawling through the circuits, understanding their technology better than they did. In reality, Earth had been watching, learning, adapting. The moment the first fleet returned in shambles, humans had begun building, not with panic, but with cold logic. They studied everything, the weapons, the materials, the way Imperial AI thought, and they built tools not to match the Empire, but to break it. Their first strike was not a laser or a bomb, it was a virus. Not the biological kind, but digital warfare of such precision and complexity that Imperial systems fell apart without a single human stepping into battle. And then, when confusion reigned, the real strike began. Earth launched no giant warships, no massive fleets, but instead unleashed weapons the Empire didn't even know existed: drone clouds invisible to radar, rail cannons hidden beneath Earth's oceans, and energy burst from satellites disguised as civilian tech. Imperial ships exploded from the inside, not because they were hit, but because their own systems turned against them. AI-controlled weapons locked onto friendly targets, defense turrets fired into the fleet's heart, and escape pods ejected without command. The Empire tried to fight back, but their weapons never fired. Their ships were blind, their shields dead, their strategies useless. On the ground, Imperial dropships attempted to land and establish control, but found themselves crashing into false terrain, guided by fake signals. Those who did manage to land were greeted not by armies, but by civilians using tactics the Empire couldn't comprehend: ambushes in tunnels, traps in buildings, even children feeding false information to confuse the invaders. It was chaos, not organized war, but it was deadly, precise chaos, exactly what humanity had perfected through centuries of internal conflict. One Imperial general sent a desperate message back to the High Command before his ship self-destructed: "We thought them primitives. They are predators in the skin of prey." The Empire had made a mistake that could not be undone. They had underestimated Earth, not just the power of its weapons, but the mind of its people. Humans didn't think like the Empire. They didn't follow the logic of control and obedience. They fought with emotion, adapted without rules, and never gave up even when everything seemed lost. The survivors who returned told tales of terror, of battles fought in silence, of enemies they never saw, of systems that betrayed them, and of humans who smiled before striking. The Emperor finally realized what they were facing. Earth was not another planet to conquer. It was a trap laid by a species that had hidden its true nature behind jokes, stories, and history books filled with warnings. And now that nature was revealed, not only had the humans won, they had made sure the Empire knew that this was only the beginning. The lesson was clear: Earth was not to be measured by its technology or size, but by the dangerous force that lived in every human being: the ability to turn weakness into strength and fear into fury. The Empire had underestimated Earth, and in doing so, had awakened something far worse than war. They had awakened humanity's wrath. The Empire had always believed in its strength, its numbers, and its legacy, but after the second failed attempt to conquer Earth, something changed in the galaxy. What was once whispered in secret now echoed in every star system: the humans were different. They had survived 2 invasions from the greatest military force the galaxy had ever known, and not just survived, but won through intelligence, strategy, and a terrifying ability to learn faster than anyone expected. For the first time, fear began to spread inside the Empire, not because of what Earth had done, but because of what it might do next. High Command was no longer confident. The Emperor held meeting after meeting, demanding answers, but even the smartest minds in the Empire had no explanation for how a single species from one small planet could be so dangerous. Some believed humans were using lost alien technology. Others thought they were secretly working with another advanced race. But the truth was worse: they were doing it all alone. Earth had become a mystery wrapped in warnings, and those who had seen their tactics up close spoke of humans like ghosts, unseen, unpredictable, and impossible to control. The Empire wanted revenge, but it no longer wanted war. Instead, it began planning in silence, trying to understand the enemy rather than destroy it. They sent spies, disguised probes, and silent scouts to watch Earth without being noticed. But the humans noticed. They always noticed. And they responded in a way no one expected: not with violence, but with silence. They stopped sending signals, shut down most of their visible systems, and made Earth look like an empty, quiet world again. From the outside, it seemed like Earth had given up or was hiding in fear. But inside, humanity was changing, preparing, and watching the galaxy just as closely as it was being watched. Governments united under one goal: not control, but survival. Scientists worked with soldiers, and civilians were trained without anyone knowing. Plans were made not just to defend Earth, but to reach further, to step into space, to spread beyond the solar system, and to make sure no one could ever threaten them again. For years, there was no war, no contact, just a cold silence between Earth and the Empire. The galaxy held its breath. Then, one day, everything changed. A deep space station on the edge of the Empire, built to monitor unknown threats, sent out a single signal panic. An object had appeared from nowhere, moving faster than anything they had ever tracked. It wasn't an asteroid or a ship, but something new, something built by hands they didn't recognize. Before they could analyze it, the station lost power. All nearby systems shut down, and when reinforcements arrived, the station was gone. Not destroyed, just gone, as if it had never existed. The object disappeared soon after. That was the turning point. For centuries, the Empire had been the one knocking on doors, demanding surrender, deciding who lived and who didn't. But now the roles were shifting. Earth was no longer just defending itself, it was beginning to act. And every system in the galaxy knew it. Suddenly, small things started happening. Imperial outposts stopped responding. Secret military labs were found abandoned, and supply routes began to vanish. At first, these incidents were ignored or blamed on local rebellions, but a pattern emerged. The damage was precise. No civilians were harmed. No cities were touched. Only military targets vanished. Only systems used to control others were being erased. Quietly, skillfully, and without leaving a trace, humanity was showing the Empire exactly how it felt to be hunted. The Emperor finally realized that Earth had become something new, not just a threat, but a force that couldn't be contained. They weren't trying to rule the galaxy or start a war, they were simply making sure no one could ever threaten them again. Every attack was a message: stay away. For the first time, the Empire understood what true fear looked like, not fear of losing battles, but fear of losing control. And they were losing it fast. Across the stars, other species began watching Earth with interest, some with hope, others with fear. They saw a race that had been tested and had risen above every expectation. A race that had turned weakness into strategy, silence into power, and pain into preparation. The Empire could no longer predict their enemy's next move. That uncertainty became poison. Confidence turned to caution. Aggression turned to hesitation. And hesitation, in war, is the beginning of defeat. Earth had not only survived, they had forced the galaxy's most powerful empire to rethink everything it believed. The turning point had come, not with a massive battle or a public victory, but with the quiet realization that the old rules no longer applied. A new force had entered the galaxy, one that didn't need to boast, one that didn't fear death, and one that had learned, above all else, how to fight in the shadows until the light bent in their favor. The age of conquest was ending. The age of humanity had just begun. The stars were quiet, but the silence was no longer peaceful. It was the kind that came before a storm, thick with tension and hidden fear. After the disappearances of key Empire outposts and the mysterious attacks on military assets, the galaxy began to feel different. A strange pressure hung over every planet, every station, every command center, as if something unseen had entered the room and refused to leave. The Galactic Empire, once proud and unshakable, now moved carefully, speaking in hushed voices and second-guessing every decision. Messages were sent out to all allied systems, warning them to remain alert but not to provoke. Fear was spreading faster than any ship could travel. It wasn't just about what humanity had done, it was about what they could still do. Every strategist and commander tried to make sense of the new human tactics. They weren't expanding like conquerors, nor hiding like cowards. Instead, they were watching, choosing their targets with chilling precision, leaving behind no bodies, no wreckage, no signs, only absence. It was a kind of war the Empire had never faced before. One by one, the most secure and hidden facilities went dark, and still, no declaration of war ever came. Earth remained silent, but the silence was not weakness, it was control. The humans had discovered something the Empire never expected: how to win without shouting, how to strike without being seen, and how to leave a message without using a single word. On the planet Krosthal, a neutral world known for its trading networks, people gathered in fear as rumors spread. A merchant ship claimed to have picked up a strange transmission from deep space, a message that repeated in a calm, emotionless voice in every known language: "Do not seek Earth." Do not test humanity. This is your only warning. At first, some believed it was fake, some dismissed it as propaganda, but then it happened again. Another ship. Another message. Then another. The warning started to echo across the galaxy, showing up in unexpected places, ancient satellites, old abandoned outposts, long-forgotten relay stations suddenly powered up for only one reason: to deliver the message. The pattern was clear. Humanity had turned their warning into an echo that could not be ignored. It wasn't just meant for the Empire anymore. It was for everyone. And it was working. Some civilizations began closing their borders, afraid of being caught between Earth and the Empire. Others quietly started sending diplomats, hoping to make peace before something worse happened. Even within the Empire, cracks began to appear. Younger officers questioned the old ways, doubting if war was still the answer. Some defected. Some disappeared. And some began to ask a dangerous question: what if the humans were right to fight back? What if they had always been right? The Emperor, once confident and proud, now sat alone more often than not, listening to reports that grew darker with each passing day. One report spoke of an imperial fleet that had entered human space without permission. It never returned. Another told of a research base that had vanished, its coordinates now marked only by a cloud of cold dust. And worst of all, a secret meeting among high-ranking officers was interrupted by a hacked communication feed. It wasn't long. It wasn't loud. It was just one line: "This is your last chance." The fear that followed wasn't just fear of death, it was fear of the unknown. Because no one truly knew how strong Earth had become or how far they were willing to go to protect themselves. Humanity had changed the rules of power. They didn't boast. They didn't demand. They didn't invade. But when they acted, it was with purpose, and they never made the same mistake twice. The message echoed louder with each passing week. Some believed it was only the beginning. Some believed it was already too late. On distant planets, children were told bedtime stories about humans not as monsters, but as ghosts in the void, always watching, always waiting. And the strange thing was, humanity hadn't launched a single full-scale attack. They hadn't destroyed cities or claimed territory. They didn't need to. The fear they had planted had already grown roots in the hearts of their enemies. And now, every star in the galaxy shone a little colder. The warning wasn't just a message, it was a shadow cast over the future. A reminder that Earth, once considered weak and simple, had survived the Empire's fire, learned from it, and now stood tall in silence. No one knew what would come next. Would Earth strike again? Would they disappear forever, leaving only myths behind? Or would they step forward and take their place as a new kind of power, one that didn't rule through fear, but through unshakable presence? The answer didn't come in explosions or speeches. It came in the silence that followed the echo. In the heavy quiet that made even the strongest tremble. The galaxy now lived with the knowledge that Earth was not just a planet, it was a warning. And that warning was still echoing, growing louder in every corner of space. And so, the Empire waited. The galaxy watched. And Earth listened.